I have a quote here. Maybe this will kind of spur us towards finishing up. I have this, and then when we do end, I have two things I want to read. This quote is, "It was as if I'd been entranced from birth into a collective nightmare of separate individuals struggling in an alien universe for survival, satisfaction, and significance." And that is by a book called One by Jerry Katz. I so related to that.
Well, absolutely. I mean, you and I have talked about that a lot. You know, that you and I have this sense of we belong to everybody and everybody belongs to us. I don't know, there's this connection that very few people really understand. And to know that there's this connection and then not to have that connection honored is hell on earth. That's my definition of hell on earth. Mm-hmm. To me, there's no hell when we die physically. We don't go to hell or purgatory or any of those places. Any of the hell stuff that we do is right here on this planet.
That's interesting because it brings up something that I heard once about hell or experiencing hell on earth. And that is that hell is being somewhere that you don't want to be.
Well, I would agree with that too. I think there's a lot of definitions for hell at all levels of consciousness.
Yeah, and really, I mean, isn't hell, the experience of hell or the experience of heaven, a place of the mind? A place we go to within our own selves?
I think the way I would choose to say it, the experience of heaven or hell has to do with our interpretation of what's going on around us. When we're living in physical form, I can be deep in the woods with Michael, and that is heaven to me. Mm-hmm. Heaven, absolute, without a doubt. Being, in Eagle River on the lake, listening to the wolves howl at night, heaven, all kinds of things that, and then hell to me is me watching an American hurt another American. That's hell. That's one version of hell. So to me, there's so many, I've never really suffered physically, but I know people who have suffered physically, and their idea of hell is the limitation of their body. Mm-hmm. Their idea of hell is the pain that they have in their body. And since I can't relate to that, I can't speak to it, mm-hmm. but I know that there is a physical hell. But I also know that there are people who have physical limitations that I've dealt with, and people who have pain in their body, that when they relax their mind and they allow, mm-hmm. they can get beyond the physical pain in their body. Mm-hmm. So that's a construct of what I call the divine mind, the soul, the higher self. Mm-hmm. So I feel like we have a body mind, and the body mind helps take care of our physical needs and our functions and things like that. But we also have this connection beyond the body, and I call that the divine mind. And to me, I've had clients, that have circumvented all miracles. I witnessed miracles in my clients because they connected to their divine mind and circumvented all the physics of the physical body and got themselves to full out health. Yeah, that's heaven on earth. That's heaven on earth.
Absolutely. That kind of goes back to the person you were watching that didn't buy the doctor's diagnosis.
Right. And Joe Dispenza is another one, very famous. So I think we underestimate our own ability to create our reality. And in order for us to really be proficient positive manifestors, not unconscious manifestors. You know, we're manifesting all the time. We're professional manifestors, but to consciously manifest what we wish to manifest requires an awareness and a utilization of the divine mind. Mm-hmm. And that's what you and I talk about all the time, with this knowing that we are so much more than this physical body here. We're so much more than Irma and Lucy. So much more. And that's the miracle, and that's our curiosity, and that's our passion, is to just keep finding out what that means for everybody. What is there so much more for them? You know, that's where our conversations go.
For sure. Yeah. I just was thinking that for me, that concept of hell, or that experience of hell, is separation.
Yeah.
Across the board. It's that feeling of separation. And I think, you know, that's the importance of the spiritual path, and making a connection to one's higher self, and from the higher self, a connection to all that is, because it creates a unity, and we could certainly use that in our world today.
Wow.
So I have one quick question, and then I have two things I want to read, which are pretty brief. Are you okay on comfort?
Yeah.
So the question is, this is a big one. In the arena of spirituality, the term enlightenment gets used a lot and seems to be a goal for a lot of spiritual people. So what do you think about the term enlightenment? And yeah, I'll stop there. What do you think about the term enlightenment?
We alluded to it before. To me, it's really a simple concept. Unbelieving, you know, people can go on forever, philosophers, about what enlightenment is. To me, it's the embodiment of the energy of love. The energy of love has light, vibration, sound, color. It's an energy. It has all these components. And the more aligned we are with our source, the more aligned we are with our soul, the more open and allowing we are, the more this love light can enter our body and really expand our awareness and our source of information and understanding of the physical and the non-physical worlds around us. To me, enlightened people have access to dimensions. They have access to other timelines. They have access to all these metaphysical things that we hear about or in spirituality talk, but it's a reality for them. It's not make-believe. They've experienced jumping timelines. They've experienced going to other dimensions. They experience seeing things that are not physical but live in other dimensions. It's just fascinating to me. But what allows them that capacity is a flow of love light into their physical body that expands all their awarenesses. It takes them past the five senses and beyond. To my way of thinking, it even upgrades the DNA in our body. It upgrades everything about our physical body, and we become lighter and lighter. We become less dense. So a lot of people who used to eat a lot of meat, I'm one of them, can't handle a lot of meat anymore, has to have a lot more vegetables, a lot more water. Water has to be clean, you know, all that kinds of stuff. My body can't handle it. I believe it is a consequence of consciously trying to raise my vibration and my consciousness. Mm-hmm. And so enlightenment to me is that process of downloading more and more and more infinitely love light into the body. Mm-hmm. And of course, Right. This is
to
in the
bring
physical. Into the body, into the body.
into this
This physical
third
vessel.
yeah.
Yeah.
Not to transcend it and
No, not to die, because as soon as we die, we go into a higher vibration and a different dimension. We continue to be enlightened, I believe, in those dimensions, because our soul is always growing. But enlightenment, as humans mean it, it's to enlighten this physical body and to then use this body and all its senses, including the third eye, in the most pure way it was designed, in my opinion. The original template of the human body is to get back to that level, but we will lose density as we do it.
Yeah.
What do you think is enlightenment?
Well, I think going all the way back to that 8-year-old experience and what you just said, to me, that experience and my journey forward, it's all felt natural.
Right.
It felt to me that that's how things naturally unfold. And it still does, reflecting back and kind of moving forward, it feels like that is natural and we get programmed out of it.
I would agree with that. But those of us who are having these kinds of discussions now and going, and really curious and learning, something triggered them back into a desire to be more than they are right now. Right. And to me, it's that curiosity and that desire to keep growing. It started out with a desire to just understand my world because it didn't make sense. And then as I was playing with trying to understand my world, then it was, well, what happened to the spiritual stuff? These spiritual experiences that I've had, these times where I crossed physicality into other dimensions. And I saw angels and I talked to angels and I was with angels. I told my mom, I'm talking to angels. She's like, don't tell anybody that or you're going to end up in a mental hospital. So it's like, it's this journey of awakening to ourselves so that we are in a position to be open and allowing to continue the enlightenment process. Okay. But for you, it was this seamless unfolding. For me, it was jumps and starts, but it happened. It happened anyway.
But, and I don't know this for sure. Again, I go back to my, my own experience. I think, I don't know for sure, because I'm just guessing at this, that, the integration of the absolute with the relative is what creates wholeness.
Right.
It seems like, and I could be wrong because I only know my own experience, that a lot of times people get embedded into the relative and then at some point reconnect or connect for the first time to the absolute, and then that integration process starts to happen.
Right.
For me, it was the opposite, the living in the absolute and having to figure out how to integrate the relative.
The relative, right.
But that it still takes focus and work and dedication and all of that. No matter what your experience is or where you're at in the integration of the absolute and the relative. Does that make any sense?
It totally makes sense. But to me, what's fun about it is that you and I desire the same thing in our lives, but we came at it from completely different angles. Yeah. And it's achievable from completely different angles.
Yeah. And that's only two examples.
And that's only two examples, and a lot of the spiritual teachers that I've had interactions with and classes, and I studied with a lot of people, including Native American Indians and shamans and all kinds of metaphysical, clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairsentient, claircognizant people. I mean, huge amounts of people. They all came at it from a different angle. but the desire to know more, the desire to go deeper, maybe, whatever. Some people were triggered by a crisis. Other people were triggered by a spiritual event. Other people were triggered by divorce. Other people were triggered by a death. It's just, it's huge.
Mm-hmm.
But it's
that brings up another question, but I may have to hold it on. And the question is, to be continued. The idea of having a spiritual teacher, and what do you think about that?
It's too good a question to let go. You know what? It's so close to my heart, the spiritual teacher thing.
Yeah.
I believe, so I'm not speaking from understanding it from your point of view, but from my point of view, not having remembered that we are all one, just having, been dealing with angels and things like that, but I didn't have that awareness that we're all
just
one.
Angels.
Just angels. Beautiful angels. But to me, there's an evolutionary process for people that had an experience somewhat similar to my progression. And when I started making sense of what I called my third dimensional reality, my everyday life, my walking around life, my career, my school, my all that stuff, when I started understanding finally what it all meant, I always knew that there was a non-physical aspect to life because I had been profoundly interacting with it through my whole life. And so I wanted to know what that meant. I wanted to know why I could be clairvoyant at times, but not consistently. I wanted to know why I was clairaudient, but not consistently. All of that stuff, So that spurred me into trying to get to people who had those experiences. And back in the 80s and the 90s, it were people that had the title of spiritual teacher, guru.
Right.
And they served a purpose. They served a purpose for a segment of my progression until I realized that once you achieve a level of understanding that you are the master of your domain, you are the master of your creator, you're the sovereign person that dictates what your reality is going to be and how you perceive it and how you interpret it, then what becomes really important then is not what someone else's experience is or what they can teach you. It becomes important for you to define your own access to source so that you can figure things out. So I became very disgruntled with teachers that would say things like, oh, you people are just so smart. You're on the leading edge of consciousness. Because to me, that was this carrot that they were always putting, and it was a manipulation and it was a strategy to maintain business. I understand the need for income, and I believe all spiritual people should be well compensated. I'm not one of these, you need to have a vow of poverty to be in a spiritual realm. But I started seeing it as a strategy that had nothing to do with personal growth. And so when I started becoming much more comfortable in my ability to access my source, to get consistent information, to feel confident that I was accessing source and that I was able, I had to convince myself that this source was valid. That it was consistent, that it wasn't going to take me down the wrong path, that this wasn't my imagination, that this wasn't, hallucinations or, the fact that I need psychiatric help. When I started feeling like I was being well guided by the information that would come to me in a variety of ways, I could let go of the spiritual teachers. Yeah. And right now, I cannot embrace a guru model at all. It is disempowering to me. There may be a group of people on a certain path of evolution and progression where they need that. But I believe it is a disservice to me now to put my attention onto the belief of someone else. I want to experience this for myself, and I want people to experience it for themselves.
That's a really good way to express all of that, for sure.
How do you feel about spirit? You know, because you've been referred to as a spiritual teacher, Irma. So have I.
Mm-hmm.
How do you?
Well, I think it's really, really important, and what I've done and what I continue to like to do is to support people in their inner seeking, their
Right.
inner journey, and to just be kind of a clear mirror for that and holding a sacred space for that. And there were different times in my life that it was important for me to read a book or hear somebody or get to become aware of somebody that was having similar experiences to mine. Because if you can't share it and nobody's really understanding what you're talking about, that's not a really great place to be. So I remember the first book I read was the Celestine Prophecies, and they were talking about everything is energy. And I'm like, oh, wow. Other people do think like me and do perceive things like me. So that was really validating. But I think the issue with, especially now because everything's so accessible on the internet, I think one can get caught up in seeking outside of themselves.
That's the harm. That is the harm.
You know, the power is somehow outside of yourself. It's not that different than you know, strict religions. It's not that different. And so I think there's I do see a need for guidance, and I have probably a problem with teacher. But guidance and companionship on the spiritual path, but getting caught in seeking as if somebody else has some answers that you yourself don't have,
right,
can be a real setback, really.
I agree. And I had people, I have a healing practice for a long time. And in the healing practice, it would be table work. And it wasn't Reiki, it was my own modality. But it looked like Reiki, but it was my modality. And then I would get hits. I would get clairvoyant or clairaudient or claircognizant hits about what was going on. So there was always a feedback period after the healing session. And I could see how addicted people got to that. And, and I kept telling them, I'm not your healer. All I'm doing is holding space. You're allowing, this is a co-creation. You have come to me with an agreement that this is a co-creation, and it's your desire, your intent, and your attention that is creating this healing session for you. I'm just co-facilitating it with you. And then they became addicted to the feedback part. Well, why did this person do this and whatever? And it got to the point where I started not taking appointments from the same people, saying, you know what, you just saw me last month, you haven't, and people are like, why do you do that? I'm doing it because I don't want that codependent relationship with people. That is not an empowering thing for them. Would it help my income bottom line? Oh my God, yes. Let's create a dependency and let's funnel those people in, every other week. Let them come for a reading, let them come for whatever they need. But that felt so out of integrity for me. And I've had other healer teachers, like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I'm like, I don't want to foster that kind of dependency because that's not what I'm here to do. It's not for me. So I'm sorry, you and I are very vested in empowering people to do their own work and their own empowerment. And that's why I think you and I relate so well.
Yeah, I think so too. As you were saying that, it also made me think of therapy,
Right.
psychotherapy,
Right.
and a dependency that can be formed around that as well, for the same reasons that you were just talking about.
And it's also, the good part is that you have found a person that understands you. That's what therapy does. That's what the healing person does.
True.
It's like they see you for the experience that you're having, and they're helping you navigate that experience. But there comes a point in time where I think the person would go, I can do this for myself, and help me learn how to do it for myself. In that respect, I'll teach.
Yeah, and that I would be definitely in alignment with. Yeah, anything that is, disempowering or creating a dependency, no matter what it is not in your best interest. No. Just in closing, I had two things that wanted to get your take on and just share. One of them is when I think about that experience I had at 8 and ongoing experiences throughout my life, to really pinpoint and find a brief way of describing what that is. And something that crossed my path at some point was this idea of soul infusion. Soul infusion is when all segments of the self are integrated and in union with the divine energy of God. Everything is sacred. Soul infusion is a direct spiritual connection with the divine oneness of all.
There's a great definition for enlightenment.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. And it's, I think, they can so easily, in a place of surrender to the present moment, that soul infusion, that state of enlightenment just happens. It just happens through a surrenderedness and an openness. I think, again, I go back to, I think it's natural.
It is natural. A lot of normal is not natural. There is that concept. We know what normal is, but many times normal goes against what is natural because it's just assumed, it's just learned. It's a learned behavior, a learned thought pattern. So, the natural thing is exactly what you expressed. Mm-hmm. It's to relax into ourselves, and to, you have to be safe, and you have to feel relaxed, and you have to feel still in order for that channel to open, and then hold the intention that you allow the information to grow you in whatever way it's going to grow you next. That soul infusion will always grow you from wherever you're at to the next step. And to be not restrictive in any way, not to constrain how that growth happens, but to just allow how the growth happens, and to see the beauty in every single lesson, challenge, conflict. There is growth. Now, once we get to a state of enlightenment, I think that we can say, I'd love to learn through joy, through fun, through ease of grace type things. I don't want to suffer to learn, but I think that's where we're coming as a humanity. I think that's what the pandemic did. All of a sudden, people looking at their lives and going, I don't like my job, and I don't like what it feels like, and I don't like how I'm treated, and I don't like where I'm living. And, it's like, it's that recalibration to what's real for us.
Yeah, and to, find that or create that safety in order to be able to relax and be open. To come to an understanding, and if you aren't at this place, find a way to get to this place to understand you are worthy.
Oh my goodness.
You are worthy of safety. You are worthy of love. You are worthy of support. Mm-hmm. And when things show up on your screen of life that aren't supporting that. To find a way to find your worthiness to say, I'm sorry, I bless you, and I release you.
Mm-hmm. And as you were saying before, it's to be discerning. It's to discern what energies are allowed in and what energies are not allowed in. And it's not cancel culture. It's not denial. It's simply discerning that for me to be at my highest version, these are the energies I choose to deal with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's self-love.
It is self-love, and knowing that, we are all worthy of that.
Right, right.
There's nobody on this earth that isn't worthy of that.
Absolutely.
Kind of going back to that 8-year-old experience and moving forward and having all these different experiences and what that revealed for me. I'll share after I read this where I got this from, because that may be a bit surprising. So I had an experience. I can't prove it. I can't even explain it. But everything that I know as a human being, everything that I am, tells me that it's real. I was given something wonderful, something that changed me forever, a vision of the universe that tells us undeniably how tiny and insignificant and how rare and precious we all are. A vision that tells us that we belong to something that is greater than ourselves, that we are not alone, that none of us are alone. I wish I could share that. I wish that everyone, even for one moment, could feel that awe, humility, and hope. That continues to be my wish.
Wow.
And that is from the movie Contact with Jodie Foster.
Oh, I just got goosebumps.
Mm-hmm. If you haven't seen that movie, it's a good one.
Oh, I've seen it several times.
Yeah,
every time I get something else out of it.
Oh, yeah. I think it's a real significant movie. And she says that at the very end in the courtroom.
I also think, I thought when you were reading it was an excerpt from your book.
Mm.
Because it's so you.
But I related and connected so strongly to when she said that. It's like, yes, go, Jodie.
And that was years ago. What, 20-some years ago? Yeah.
Because there's a scene, I believe, in that movie where she meets her father, who has already passed over.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that movie, wow, it still blows my mind. And it blows my mind that they put so much into it. It was so coded with intelligence so many years ago, and it's still being revealed. But that's what a good book does when you go back and reread good books and things like that. It's like, well, we're at a different level of consciousness, so we can see different things, pick out different thoughts. Very cool.
One thing I want to say, as we bring this to a close, and I'm not sure how, I come across. My hope is that I never, ever come across as if I think I have arrived at something or somewhere and that I don't have work to be done or things to learn or that I'm, because of these experiences that I've had, that I'm somehow in some special place. I absolutely don't feel that at all. And so I just wanted to clarify that, because I've seen other people sharing, and sometimes I can start to feel that way, that wow, I could never live up to what they've experienced or what they are experiencing. So I somehow am not doing something right or whatever. And I guess I just wanted to make sure and clarify and hope that I'm not coming across.
Well, you're not coming across that way to me. I think what the intention in all our conversations over the last couple of years have been just to get an understanding of what it feels like to know more than what it seems that the collective is living, and to make sense for one another. But no, I one of the things that I enjoy most about you, and the idea of everyday mystics, is that there are so many people walking the planet that have great wisdom, that their path isn't to be front and center and an influencer or a teacher or whatever, but they live their lives in quiet joy, and their smiles and their little random acts of kindness, and whatever they do, they just elevate the whole vibration of the planet. And that goes back to what you said, we are all worthy. All of us are worthy. So total 100% agreement with you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing this time today and being so open. And I just feel it's so important to find people that are open to having these kind of conversations, and to support and encourage each other in doing so, and in going deeper with that. I do find at times I feel a lack of support,
Yeah,
and companionship in a willingness to experience life outside of the status quo.
right. Right back at you, Irma.